After my wife abandoned me in international waters for 21 days, I finally signed the divorce papers. She had taken her student, who had conveniently lost his memory, and hidden away on a deserted island for a full 6 months. She seemed to have completely forgotten that she had a child less than 6 months old and a home. To prevent her student from suffering any mental shock, she cut off all contact with the outside world, forbidding anyone from approaching the island, especially me. When I finally found them, after going through hell and back, I saw them embracing in a field of dancing dandelions, making wishes. Taking advantage of my distraction, my wife knocked me unconscious, dragged me onto a dilapidated boat, and cast me adrift into the open ocean. I nearly died out there. I came back with severe PTSD, terrified of darkness and silence. Now, as the dandelions began a new cycle of blooming, my wife finally brought her student down from the mountain. But she didn't know that the baby and I already had new family. I froze when I saw Elena Vance in my classroom. "Whoa, Mrs. Bennett is back." The students were chattering excitedly, calling out to her, greeting her. Looking at Elena, standing there graceful and impeccably made up, I felt nothing but unfamiliarity. The bell rang just in time. I cleared my throat lightly. "That's it for today's lecture. Don't forget the assignment." Ignoring the collective groan from the class, I strode back to my office. Elena followed close behind, greeting everyone she passed as if nothing had happened. As if her 6-month disappearance was just a dream, a nightmare that belonged only to me. "Long time no see. What are you wearing?" Elena reached out, trying to straighten my tie. I took a step back. Elena paused, her hand hovering in midair. "Elena, aren't you forgetting something?" She looked embarrassed. She glanced around the office. Everyone else pretended to be busy. She lowered her voice. That divorce agreement was just to calm Caleb down. You know, his condition was unstable at the time. Before she left for the island, Elena had given me a divorce agreement she had already signed. It was only after I returned from the open sea, surviving by a thread, that I finally made up my mind to sign it. "Not that, Elena. Do you remember you have a daughter?" "Of course I remember. I carried her for 9 months. How could I forget?" She smiled, trying to be charming. "Ah, Annie is almost turning 1, right? I came back specifically to celebrate her birthday. I even brought her a gift, a whole courtyard full of dandelions. It's beautiful." I looked at her coldly and immediately dialed the housekeeper. "Call an ambulance. Now." Only then did Elena remember. 6 months ago, Annie had been exposed to dandelions and was hospitalized for a severe allergic reaction. At that time, Elena was accompanying Caleb Reed on a field expedition. Caleb was one of the first students Elena and I took on. When he first enrolled, he claimed he fell in love with Elena at first sight and pursued her aggressively. At the time, Elena and I had been married for 3 years and were just preparing to start a family. Naturally, Elena rejected her own student. But after that, she didn't exactly push him away. She took Caleb out for meals, bought him clothes, and even wrote his thesis for him, academic fraud, the very thing Elena used to despise most. When I questioned her, Elena looked at me with disgust. "We have a teacher-student relationship. Stop projecting your filthy thoughts onto others. A teacher guiding a student's paper is perfectly natural. Is that the excuse for booking hotel rooms together?" Elena shoved me away, scolding, "Stop thinking with your lower half. Lucas, you make me sick." She actually threw up after saying it. That was when I found out Elena was pregnant. The child we had longed for had arrived at the worst possible moment. And the reason she hadn't told me was that she wanted an abortion. "Lucas, I just think we're still young. We can have kids later." Elena's expression was indifferent, and my heart ached. We grew up together in the same faculty, a housing block, childhood sweethearts. Elena had wanted a child of our own for years. I was the one who wanted her to enjoy her freedom a bit longer. Elena was nearing 30 now, approaching the end of the prime biological window, so we had only started trying after careful consideration. "It's just an unformed embryo, Lucas. Let's give it up," she said. "I still want to enjoy our time as a couple a little longer, okay?" Her eyes were full of tentative testing. I took a step back. "Fine." That was the first time I wanted to give up on my marriage with Elena. Since Caleb appeared, she seemed like a different person. 30 years of companionship couldn't compete with Caleb, who had only been around for 3 months. "Thanks, hubby. I love you the most." Elena was happy. I forced a smile, but inside I was shattered because I had seen her chat logs with Caleb. "Let's go to Antarctica to see the penguins next month." Caleb was young and full of whimsical ideas. Elena had replied, "Wow, Antarctica sounds so cool." I scrolled through my own messages with Elena. They were filled with mundane complaints about how boring I was. I smiled bitterly. I wasn't young anymore. My life wasn't just about romance and travel. It was about tenure, lesson planning, and caring for our aging parents. Before Elena was wheeled into the operating room, Professor Arthur Vance, her father, suddenly appeared. "Dad, why are you here?" Elena looked at me in shock, assuming I had called in reinforcements. "Don't look at Lucas. If a colleague hadn't seen you, I wouldn't have known you were making such big decisions on your own." My parents and Professor Vance were colleagues. They had always supported us. Because Professor Vance was more traditional, my parents had promised early on that if we had a child, they would support whatever surname we chose. Ironically, out of all the grandparents, the person most looking forward to this child was Professor Vance. "You spent a year trying for this baby. Why give it up now?" he demanded. "Elena, those rumors at school. Don't tell me they're true." The gossip about Elena and Caleb had been circulating for a while. Professor Vance had heard it, but hadn't intervened because I had remained steadfast in my belief that Elena wouldn't stray. "Elena, is this how I raised you?" The Vance family was strict, and Elena had always been the rule-abiding good girl. But this time, everything was different. "How you raised me. How you raised me. I've been suppressing myself my whole life just to be a good kid. Until now. I finally realized this isn't what I want." Elena, still lying on the gurney, screamed hysterically at her father, then grabbed a medical tray and hurled it at me. "You despicable coward." She was convinced I had orchestrated this intervention. The scene was a chaotic farce, and I was forced to play the clown. And this was only the beginning. Elena was confined to her home by Professor Vance. I went to visit her every day. "Lucas, remember when I had chickenpox in high school? You visited me every day just like this." Elena sat on the balcony, the setting sun hitting her face, her hand gently stroking her lower abdomen. Bathed in the golden light, she looked beautiful, almost saintly. "Look, we had such a wonderful past. Why do you become like this now? Just like my father, domineering and selfish." Elena's phone rang. It was the custom ringtone she had set for Caleb. Her eyes lit up instantly, her entire demeanor injected with vitality. Elena was an adult. After all, Professor Vance couldn't keep her locked up for the entire pregnancy. During a prenatal checkup, Elena slipped away. She brazenly posted a picture of flight tickets to Antarctica on her social media. Both sets of parents and I were worried sick. Traveling to Antarctica in her condition was incredibly dangerous. We loved her, not just the baby. But no matter how we begged, she wouldn't stop. For those few days in Antarctica, Elena posted updates daily. Caleb was always the protagonist of every photo, as if the person behind the camera had eyes only for him. When Elena returned, it was as if she had just been on a long vacation. She even brought gifts for everyone. Thankfully, Annie had been good in her belly, and Elena's health was stable, which was a relief. When she was 6 months pregnant, Elena demanded an induction abortion again. The trigger was waking up feeling bloated and unable to stand her protruding belly. The process of creating life is great but painful, and no one demanded Elena must enjoy it. But the sheer detachment made me uncomfortable. "The baby can survive in an incubator at this stage. Why terminate?" I asked. "Besides, a late-term abortion is dangerous for your body." Professor Vance had given up on controlling Elena, and so had I. Though my heart broke for the child, I respected Elena's autonomy. Under the doctor's persuasion, Elena hesitated, and Annie was eventually born full-term. I booked the best luxury postpartum center, but Elena refused to stay in the same city as Annie. She took Caleb and flew to Florida alone. "Lucas, understand me. I am myself first, a mother second. Besides, I'm still young. Raising a kid ages you. If you really love me, don't force me to be a mom." I began a life of working days and caring for the baby at night. Meanwhile, Elena went diving and surfing with Caleb, breathing the air of freedom. When Annie turned 1 month old, Elena and Caleb returned. They immediately started hitting the bars and clubs, living the nightlife. "Come pick me up." That night, just as Annie fell asleep, I received a text from Elena with the bar's address. I arrived at the bar, and Elena came out shortly after, but when she saw me, her expression turned to disgust. "Lucas, are you stalking me again? Do I have zero freedom? Do you know how to respect people?" I looked up. Caleb was standing not far behind her, a cigarette dangling from his lips, wearing a smirk of vague mockery. "Old man, Caleb out. Elena frona deeply." Caleb immediately pursed his lips, putting on an innocent act. "Professor Vance, I just think he's too controlling." "Professor, don't stay with him. He can't give you what you want." Caleb was clearly a bit drunk. Elena waved her hand. "Caleb, you've had too much." Where no one was looking, Caleb's lips tightened, as if he were the victim. "Lucas, go back first. I'll take Caleb home." Elena was a famous beauty on campus, Her every move attracted attention, especially with such juicy gossip. That very night, news of Elena and Caleb spending the night together drunk spread through the entire university forum. Professor Vance sat in front of Annie's crib, his eyes red. "Lucas, we failed you. We didn't raise our daughter right." Elena overheard this, and another argument erupted between father and daughter. After that, Elena rarely came home. She took a team of students, led by Caleb, on a 3-month field expedition. Annie wasn't even 100 days old then, but she had learned to roll over. Sadly, she had never been held by her mother. My contact with Elena became less and less frequent. In our few brief calls, I always heard Caleb's name or voice. Later, Caleb fell from a mountain. Elena rushed home once. It was that visit where her clothes were covered in dandelion fluff. Shortly after she left, Annie, less than 6 months old, entered the ICU for the first time. I learned later that Caleb had confessed his love to Elena again in the wilderness. When Elena rejected him, he lost control, ran off, and accidentally fell off a cliff. When he woke up, he had amnesia. Elena felt it was her fault. To atone, she strictly followed the doctor's orders to cut off all of Caleb's contact with the outside world. To give him maximum relaxation, they returned to the deserted island near where the accident happened. While they were gone, Annie spent a long night in the ICU. I stood guard outside the door all night. That was when I met Sarah. Dr. Sarah Cole was Annie's attending physician. She was patient with Annie, and Annie relied on her. After Elena pushed me out to sea and I survived by a miracle, the divorce agreement she had signed was waiting on the table. I signed my name. Professor Vance told me to take it to the clerk's office for notarization. "Lucas, the Vance family has wronged you. As for this daughter of mine, we will pretend we never raised her." After getting the divorce decree, Professor Vance immediately invited Sarah to the house. That's when I learned Sarah was actually Professor Vance's favorite former student. His intentions were obvious, but I didn't want to drag anyone else down, so Sarah and I didn't push things further immediately. But Sarah loved children. She often came to visit Annie, and Annie adored her. Every time Sarah left, Annie would cry her heart out. This time, when Annie was rushed to the hospital for allergies, Sarah was the attending physician again. "Didn't I tell you not to let Annie near dandelions?" Dandelion pollen causes respiratory allergies. It can easily cause shock and suffocation. Sarah scolded me anxiously. I could only lower my head in shame. It was indeed my negligence. "Hey, doctor, isn't that a bit harsh?" Sarah looked up at Elena, then quickly wheeled Annie away. "I think this doctor is making a big deal out of nothing," Elena said, looking at me for validation. "It's just an allergy. What kid doesn't have allergies?" "Elena, allergies are serious. Just like how you've been allergic to peanuts since you were little." Elena's symptoms weren't severe, but just hearing the word peanut made her uncomfortable, so I never mentioned it. Elena frowned and crossed her arms. "Why bring that up all of a sudden?" I shook my head. Annie was still being treated, but Elena's phone had rung several times. "Go answer it," I said. Elena seemed to have some reservations about me hearing, so she walked a distance away and whispered into the phone. The hallway was quiet. I could vaguely hear Caleb's voice on the other end. "What? You're hurt." Elena looked at me. I waved her off, signaling her to leave. She frowned, asking how he got hurt. I was mildly curious. Caleb was a grown man, fit as an ox from trekking the Antarctic and deserts. What kind of injury would make Elena panic like this? Annie hadn't inhaled too much pollen. Half an hour later, Sarah brought her out. She was awake. I entrusted Annie to Sarah and went to pay the bill. At the clinic desk, I ran into Caleb and Elena. Caleb's hand was being bandaged. "Doctor, does it need stitches?" Elena looked frantic. I glanced over. It was a scratch less than an inch long. "Does he need a tetanus shot?" The doctor bandaging him was a bit rough, and Caleb hissed. Elena immediately stood up. "Do you know what you're doing? Be gentle." The middle-aged male doctor looked up at Elena. "Are you his mother?" Elena's face changed instantly. "He's a grown man. A scratch this size would heal in 2 days without a bandage." "Stop whining." Elena looked like she wanted to argue, but she turned and saw me standing outside the clinic door. "Why are you stalking me again?" "Lucas, are you done yet?" She vented the anger she received from the doctor onto me. I turned to leave, but Elena chased after me. "Caleb is hurt. It's serious, so I came to check on him." "Lucas, are you angry again?" I wasn't angry. Disappointment, once accumulated enough, leaves no room for anger. I just felt cold for Annie's sake. Elena wasn't incapable of caring for others. She just felt Annie wasn't important. "Lucas, what is wrong with you? Why are you being so passive-aggressive?" I hadn't said a word, yet I was defined as passive-aggressive. I turned back. "By the way, give me my house key." Elena didn't hear clearly, so I repeated myself. My house key. In the divorce agreement, you said you didn't want the apartment. I already sent the keys for the suburban villa to your parents' place. Give me the key to the city apartment. I'm getting it professionally cleaned to make sure there's no dandelion fluff left. Reluctantly, Elena handed it over. Just then, Caleb walked out, bandaged, leaning against the wall with a pale face. He looked as if he had lost pints of blood, but Elena fell for it. She rushed to support him. Professor, why is Mr. Bennett here? Is it a coincidence again? Caleb hinted that I was stalking Elena. Elena frowned. Ignore him. But I had to make it clear. I'm here to pay Annie's medical bills and buy her some food. Only then did Elena seem to remember Annie was in the hospital. Is Annie okay? I nodded and prepared to leave. Caleb suddenly whispered, is anyone really allergic to dandelions? For kids, they need desensitization therapy. Exposure builds immunity. Elena nodded. He's right. Parents shouldn't be overprotective. Dandelions are everywhere. Is she never going to leave the house? I laughed out of sheer anger. You two are supposed to be highly educated. I don't want to explain how severe anaphylaxis is to you. Also, if it weren't for you, Annie wouldn't have been exposed. We don't live near plants that shed fluff like that. Elena, I hope you won't come see Annie anymore. After all, we are already. Ouch. Caleb's cry interrupted me. His wounds seemed to be throbbing. Elena immediately hugged his arm nervously, calling for the doctor. We are already divorced, I said clearly. And I have a new wife, and Annie has a new mother. Don't disturb us anymore. Elena rolled her eyes at me. Changing tactics now. I shrugged. Believe what you want. Had she really not seen the divorce certificate I mailed her? After the farce, I returned to the ward and saw Sarah holding Annie, her eyes red. I knew the feeling well. I'd been red-eyed outside the ER all night. As a parent, every time your child is sick, you wish you could suffer in their place. Annie was carefully wiping Sarah's tears. She stared at Sarah for a long time, then suddenly popped out a word. Mama! Sarah and I were shocked. Annie was almost 1, but she had never spoken before. This was her first word, and she called Sarah Mama. Sarah immediately looked flustered. I didn't teach her to say that. Her face turned bright red as she explained to Annie. Annie, I'm not. I shook my head. No, you are. Sarah treated Annie with genuine love. As Annie grew, a girl would always long for a mother, and I had to start a new life. Sarah looked at me in surprise. I always thought, I shouldn't drag you into this mess. No. Sarah shook her head. How do you know it's a mess? Because the person stuck in the mud was me, my past self, and my present self. My 30-year bond with Elena contained love, family, and friendship. My eyes habitually followed her. When she pulled away, my small world collapsed. In this collapsed, chaotic world, I met Sarah, who deserved vast, open skies. I always felt I wasn't good enough for her. Sarah shook her head again. It's not like that, Lucas. I can't have children. Sarah revealed her secret without reservation. For someone who loves kids but can't conceive, you are already my best choice. I picked up Annie. Sarah, you are an incredible person. Your value has never been defined by your ability to give birth. Sarah turned her head away, her voice thick with emotion. I don't care. I'm stuck with you now. Annie looked at us blankly. Manga, dada. This time, we really were a family. I told Professor Vance about Sarah and me immediately. He felt a mix of bitterness and relief. You're both good kids. My family didn't have the fortune to keep you. Sarah waved her hands. Professor, don't say that. We won't change Annie's life. You will always be her grandfather. Annie's acute reaction came fast and left fast. The next day, the doctor said she could be discharged. I want to handle the paperwork. Sarah was holding Annie when Elena suddenly appeared at the door. Who are you? Elena felt the doctor who had given her attitude yesterday looked familiar, but couldn't place her. Sarah instinctively tightened her hold on Annie. Annie nuzzled into Sarah's cheek and blew a spit bubble. Manga. Elena thought Annie was calling her. Delighted, she raised her arms to take the baby. But her wrists were adorned with sharp jewelry, bracelets Caleb had given her, full of youthful edge. Sarah hesitated. Elena, who already disliked this doctor, practically snatched Annie away. Thrust into a stranger's arms, Annie immediately started wailing. Elena clumsily tried to soothe her. Annie, it's Mommy. But Annie reached out towards Sarah, screaming Mama, hysterically. Sarah couldn't take it. Elena, children are fragile. Watch your strength. Elena hugged Annie tighter out of spite. You brat. I'm your real mother. Why are you crying? Her movements were rough, her tone harsh. Annie cried even harder. Sarah was heartbroken. Annie should. Elena, let me hold her. You're hurting her. Elena dodged Sarah's hand. I've been wanting to say this. Doctor, aren't you overstepping? This is my daughter. I'll hold her how I want. I gave her life. So what if it hurts a little? Just as Annie looked like she might pass out from crying, Professor Vance strode in. What's wrong? Why is Annie crying so hard? He saw the scene. Elena, why are you here? Professor Vance took Annie from Elena and immediately handed her to Sarah. Annie sniffled and stopped crying, clinging to Sarah's neck. Mama. Elena's face went completely dark. Professor Vance smiled. Our Annie can call Mama now. Good job, Dad. I'm Annie's mom. Professor Vance waved his hand. Didn't you dislike Annie? Besides, you and Lucas are divorced. From now on, just pretend you never gave birth to her. Elena's face drained of color. Dad, what do you mean? What do you mean divorced? What do you mean pretend I never gave birth? I walked into the room just in time to see Elena try and snatch Annie again. She shoved Sarah, who nearly fell but kept a tight grip on the baby. Are you okay? Sarah shook her head and hid behind me. Lucas, explain this to me. Who is this woman? Elena looked betrayed, her face red with anger. Caleb appeared behind her, tugging at her sleeve. Professor, you signed the divorce agreement before you left. It's been notarized. The divorce certificate was mailed to your current address. Divorce certificate? Elena turned around blankly, catching the evasive look on Caleb's face. She understood instantly. Then this woman, Elena pointed at Sarah. I stepped in front of Sarah. Professor Vance sighed. Sarah is a good woman, and Annie loves her. Didn't you want freedom? Go chase your freedom. Elena took a step back. Caleb supported her. Professor, your life should be a wilderness. No. Elena shook her head. That agreement. I was just acting out. I didn't really want a divorce. Years of feelings. Elena, like me, couldn't distinguish what kind of love remained. I just thought I should experience new lifestyles while I'm young. I didn't want a divorce. Lucas, don't leave me. Professor Vance couldn't listen anymore. He waved us away. Take Annie home. She suffered enough this time. Right, Annie? I gave birth to Annie. Elena reached for the baby again. Annie screamed in terror. Elena, you were the one who wanted to abandon Annie. When Annie was born, Elena had cared for a few days, then never thought of her again. The divorce papers explicitly stated she didn't want custody. Given her attitude, no one dared hand Annie to her. Caleb hurriedly pulled Elena away. She hesitated, then followed him. Outside the hospital, she threw off Caleb's hand. Why have I never seen the divorce certificate? Caleb looked pained. Professor, marriage is just a shackle for you. You should see the wider world. Let's go to Kenya for the Great Migration. I asked you, where is the certificate? Caleb pulled it from his bag. I just didn't think you should be bothered by these things. My business is none of your business. Elena snatched the document. Her eyes were fixed on the green cover. Professor, Caleb tried to touch her, but she shoved him into the wall. Ouch, he gasped in pain, but Elena walked away without looking back. Elena went to the clerk's office to make a scene, claiming she hadn't consented. She came to my office, my classroom, crying, repenting, kneeling. She was determined to make me feel sorry for her. In the past, if she even scraped her skin, my heart would ache. Now, watching her theatrics, I felt only exhaustion. That night, when I returned to my office to grab some things, the lights suddenly cut out. The door clicked shut. In that instant, I was back on the open sea 6 months ago. The water was pitch black and silent, lifeless yet hiding 1,000 staring, beastly eyes. My breathing turned rapid. My limbs went ice cold. Terror wrapped around me from the outside in. I couldn't move. I hated my weakness, but I couldn't conquer the fear. Just then, a candle was lit. In the dim flicker, my pathetic state was fully revealed. Lucas. It was Elena. She was wearing a sexy dress, looking at me with confusion. Perhaps my expression was too horrific. She hesitated. What's wrong with you? I shoved her aside and bolted out the door. When I got home, Annie was giggling in Sarah's arms. I finally broke through the suffocating fear. What happened? Sarah walked over quickly. I hugged both of them. Family was the power to defeat all fear. When my limbs warmed up, I told Sarah everything about what happened on the boat. Sarah's eyes turned red again. I'm sorry. I came too late. How hard it is to meet the right person too late. The suppressed pain of 2 years surged up. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I cried like a child. For 2 years, my best friend Mark said I looked like a different person. Unhappiness shows on the face. Being unloved seeps into the bones. Now my bones were filled with shattered pride, but thankfully it was all over. Sarah's embrace was warm. When I finally calmed down, I realized she had been holding Annie the whole time, and Annie had fallen asleep like a little piglet. It's okay. It's all in the past. I put Annie to bed and hugged Sarah properly for the first time. Thank you. Thank you for crossing mountains and rivers to heal my heart. It had started raining outside. When I went to close the window, I saw a solitary figure below. It was Elena. She stood alone in the rain, stubbornly looking up at our window. When she saw me, she fell to her knees on the pavement. Lucas, I know everything now. She must have visited Professor Vance. When I was first rescued from the sea, Professor Vance had seen me, skeletal and unrecognizable. I closed the window. The next morning, Sarah's phone rang. The person on the other end was Caleb. He said Elena had been in the rain yesterday and had a high fever, but she refused to go to the hospital. He hoped I could persuade her. I had blocked both of them long ago. I didn't know where they got Sarah's number. Student Caleb, if she's sick, take her to a doctor. A few days later, it was Annie's first birthday. We had booked the venue and sent invitations long ago. The day before the party, Mark called me. Luke, I remember you booked the Ritz for the party. Why does it say the Plaza now? Wait, this invitation. Mark had watched Elena and me grow up. When he received the original invite, he joked about the signature. Father, Lucas Bennett. Mother, Sarah Cole. But the invite Mark was showing me now listed the mother as Elena Vance. Did Elena send this? Damn, what does this mean? Elena had resent invitations to all our friends and family, changing the venue and the mother's name. Professor Vance was clutching his chest in anger. When she had it, she didn't cherish it. Now that she doesn't, she tries to steal it back. Is she insane? What a sin. How did I raise such a daughter? I'm calling the relatives right now. We stick to our invitation. Annie's birthday party proceeded smoothly. When it was time for the cake ceremony, where Annie would blow out her candle, the banquet hall suddenly went quiet. Everyone looked toward the entrance. Elena stormed in. I hadn't seen her in a while, and she looked terrible. Her face was pale, but her cheeks flushed an unnatural red. Her breathing was loud and labored. Caleb followed her, looking worried. Annie. Elena stood at the foot of the stage, looking at Annie with desperate hope. Mommy brought you a gift. Do you like it? Sweet Annie, come to Mommy, okay? Annie waved her hand in refusal. Elena kept her arms open, looking awkwardly at me, at Professor Vance, at every relative she had hurt. Professor. Caleb stood behind her with red eyes. For the first time, Elena didn't turn back for him. Cough, cough, cough. Elena started coughing violently. Her shoulder blades protruded sharply. I felt a twinge of unease. Sarah patted my hand. Student Caleb, get Professor Vance to a hospital immediately. I'm not leaving. I am Annie's mother. I will attend her first birthday. We are a family of 3. That is true happiness. Elena pushed past the people in front of her, tried to get to the stage. She reached out to grab Annie, a ruthless look in her eyes. Annie was terrified, burying herself in Sarah's arms. Enough. I picked up the microphone. Elena, from the moment you signed the divorce papers, from the moment you abandoned me and Annie to leave, we were finished. No, I don't allow it. Lucas, I said I don't allow it. Elena wouldn't listen. When we were on the island, you drugged me with sleeping pills and put me alone on a dinghy. That boat drifted for 21 days. I was tossed by waves and storms for 21 days. In those moments, the old Lucas died. Elena, human cells regenerate every 21 days. After those 21 days, I became a brand new Lucas Bennett. A Lucas Bennett who was murdered once by his own wife. I am sorry, Lucas. Elena wept, apologizing over and over. I will never forgive you, Elena. Goodbye. I never saw Elena again after that. Years later, some said Elena died. Others said she put herself on a small boat and sailed out alone into the ocean, never to be heard from again. But none of that mattered anymore. Sarah was wonderful to Annie, caring for every detail of her life. Even I benefited from Annie's care. I slowly walked out of the shadows, conquered the fear in my heart, and found new drive in my career. Sarah often took Annie to visit Professor Vance. They got along like a real family. It seemed no one remembered Elena existed. Before Annie started elementary school, her kindergarten organized a family trip. Sarah and I took Annie. While watching the lion cubs at the zoo, Annie suddenly asked Sarah a question. Mama, are you the mommy who gave birth to me? I was startled. Sarah smiled gently and shook her head. The events of the past were too complex, so we tried to explain things to Annie without emotion. But obviously, Annie couldn't understand all the nuances. She just kissed Sarah on the cheek. Mama, I know. You must have really wanted to give birth to me. Tears instantly fell from Sarah's eyes. It was the first time I saw her cry. Yes, Annie. Mommy wanted to give birth to our Annie so much. Mommy came to this world just to be Annie's mommy. Mama, I love you. Annie buried herself in Sarah's embrace, resting her head against Sarah's neck, her favorite, most secure position since she was a baby. Annie, Mommy loves you too. Did you guys forget someone? I asked sourly from the side. Sarah and Annie laughed together. Looking at my wife and daughter, I felt that this was the happiest moment of my life. I only hope this moment can last forever. The sky is clear, the time is right, and the road of life is long. May we all live for ourselves. Story complete.